friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network podcast. My name is Lauren Culp. I'm the publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and it is my job on this show to have conversations with all of the thought leaders who support the credit union community. We get to identify those issues that affect credit unions and have a discussion on some of the best practices out there so that we can all learn from one another and improve our credit unions together. My guest on today's show is Doug Burke, the CEO at Ox. I'm really excited to have him here, so let's dive in to the conversation. Doug, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Appreciate being here.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to start, I start all these episodes with just a little bit of background on you. So most of us didn't grow up thinking we'd get to work with credit unions someday. I don't think we've had a single guest who has intended to work with credit unions as a kid. So I'm curious, what did you want to be growing up?
It was interesting. Growing up, I'd say I had a need for speed. Everything was related to, I wanted to be a race car driver. I wanted to be a ski racer. I was a bike racer for a while. So it had all of those needs for, I guess, speed and acceleration. And I was smart enough to not follow any of those passions and went to a career where I could actually make a living. So.
All right. Well, so what was the inspiration or what was the journey like to bring you to where you are now as the CEO at Ox?
It's kind of evolved. I actually worked for Mountain West Credit Union Association, started there in the mid 80s. And I had a role as CFO. And at the time, the credit unions were looking at this new product called share branching. And they said, hey, we need to know more about it. How do we do it? And so I got selected, good or bad, to actually do the business case or the business plan on it. And then so after that, the board at the association said, yeah, we ought to move forward with that. And I was tapped to actually, oversee it and run it after that. So It just kind of happened by circumstance and through various evolutions, going from Mountain West to the separate CUSO and onto our own. And here today, 30 years later, that's how it happened.
That is amazing. Well, I have to congratulate you, as I know that Ox is celebrating its 30th year in business as a CUSO this year, which is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know you initially started as a shared branching network, but really expanded based on some of the feedback from your clients with some of the other areas that they needed help with. So can you share with our listeners, what was that journey like and what support does Ox provide to your credit union partners today?
Sure, absolutely. Well, like I said a second ago, it started 30 years ago when a group of collaborative credit unions got together and said, hey, this share branching thing is bigger than just any one credit union, and we need to work together on it. And that's what kicked us off. And back then, we were known as CUInsight Network. And we started with share branching. We continue to offer share branching to our credit unions today. But probably about 6-7 years ago, we really started to look at, what else is out there that we can help credit unions with. And that's where we really started to zero in on the back office services. And so we orchestrated a formal research and development initiative. We didn't want to do a field of dreams, build it, and they will come. It's like, is there a real need? Are credit unions actually asking for it? Where are some of these new things? And so we're looking at it to say, if we work on things together in a back office environment, can we put together a solution that's cost effective? It takes into account economies of scale and really, get some experienced staff in there. And one of the things that we look at is, it's the focus. And so because of that, we try not to be all things to everyone. And so over those, the last 6-7 years, we started off with accounting services. In the very beginning, it was very basic. But today, it's from basic services all the way to month end to call reports and everything in between. We also have a CFO consulting services. Some credit unions have really good day-to-day operations, but they could use some help on the high level. And then we ventured into compliance. We actually purchased a CUSO from a credit union in Virginia and got into that a few years ago. And then our most recent one is our query data analytics platform. And so all those combined, we're looking at it saying, how can we help the credit union? And that's where we're at today. And that's how our journey has evolved.
Wow, that's amazing. I especially love that philosophy of maybe don't start by, building it and hoping they'll come, but really understanding what your clients are asking for and what those credit unions you serve need. Sounds like you have provided a lot of the services that folks are looking for today. I know that's super impactful. And one of the things you mentioned ahead of our recording today that really stood out to me is so aligned with the credit union philosophy, and that's that Ox is really committed to helping small and medium-sized credit unions survive and thrive. And I think the way you guys put it recently in an article is that you're the people helping the people who help the people. We'll link to that CUInsight article that you all wrote recently. But I'm curious about the thought and the story behind that. Can you share more for our listeners on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know the people helping people is a credit union motto that's been around for years and years. And we look at it and we take it a step further. So we're the people who help the credit union, who then helps the members. So helping the people who help the people who help the people. And so it's really, that focus and what we're trying to do there. And if you look at the smaller the credit union size you go, and obviously it depends on everybody else's definition of small or medium size. But I look at it to a certain extent that the smaller credit unions are almost driving forward, looking in the rearview mirror. They wear so many hats and they've got so many things that they're having to do day-to-day operations. Some of the things we're talking about, the accounting or compliance, they have to do those things. So do they have time to really be looking forward strategically? And how do we grow? How do we become innovative? And so that's what we're really trying to do, is to say, hey, can we take some of those burdens off of your hands? And it just happens. It's, going to get done. You can trust us. And can you spend that extra time instead of managing it internally? Can you look through the windshield now and try to figure out how to be more aggressive in your growth and take the credit union forward, rather than maybe being stuck in neutral and just making sure, all the day-to-day things are done and done timely.
Right.
So that's where a lot of that comes from.
That's amazing. Well, one other thing I'd like to touch on with you, and that's your passion for your own team and your own employees, which I know grew from, was it just 2 people at the beginning 30 years ago?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So today, I have 52 people, it sounds like, working on your team. So what is that growth like? And I'm especially curious, as teams grow and evolve, the culture changes, the norms of the team change. So what has that growth been like for you all?
As far as I would say the first, 20, 25 years, it's been fairly steady from the standpoint of creating the infrastructure of the network. But it's really, the last couple of years that have changed rapidly. We, up until, COVID, everybody came to the office. We had actually an office in Virginia for the compliance group. We had our corporate office here in Lakewood, Colorado. And typical office atmosphere, you wake up, you come to work, you do your job, you innovate, you talk to your peers, you sit in the break room and you chit chat and, all the things that we have come to know. But then COVID hit, and it, kind of had maybe some mixed blessings for us. And what I mean by that is, unfortunately, as a lot of people experienced, we had to send all of our employees home. There was lockdowns. And as we started to come out of it, the governments would say, "Oh yeah, you can go back." Well, no, you can't. And well, here's the rules and the distancing and all those other types of things. And there were so many potential starts and stops, and we were going to do a hybrid approach to that. And finally, we got to the point where you take that, and you also take the fact that we're doing back office services to credit unions, and there's the great resignation that we're hearing about. Well, our services were very much in demand now because they are having a difficult time hiring people.
Sure.
Our hiring has grown tremendously, probably in the last 12 to 18 months. And to be able to meet the market demand, we were looking for people, trying to find a blend depending on the particular area. we'll find somebody out of college and we'll train them and work their way up. But we also need some seasoned people that really know how to do their job and can take it and run with it. Well, on the experience side, trying to find, the number of people that we needed in the Denver, metro area was going to be extremely difficult. And the fact that as we were starting to recruit a number of potential candidates, they're very upfront saying, if I have to go into an office, I'm not interviewing. Mm-hmm. And so we took that with, all the other different pieces that we were looking at. And we finally developed fully remote philosophy coming to the, office environment. And so it's probably one of the best things that we've done. Now, is it challenging? Yes. I mean, trying to develop a remote culture and having a cohesiveness when everybody's spread around the country. We use team meetings. We try to keep people connected. We have a celebration squad. They do some, entertaining things, try to make fun type things happen. But at the end of the day, we've been able to go hire some of the best people around the country. And literally we have employees from the East Coast to the West Coast. And especially with the accounting services, we now have people in all different time zones to meet the needs of our crediting. So, looking back on it, we didn't really totally anticipate and plan it out this way, but it really has been a benefit to us to where we're at today and the policies and the business approach that we put together.
That is incredible. The CUInsight team is also all remote. And so it's in a couple of years before the pandemic, I think we started, but it's been definitely an interesting shift for me leading a team being all remote. I'm curious, as you tackled the shift for the in-office work to going all remote, and I especially love that you mentioned you were kind of responding to the needs and desires of the sort of the workforce at large as you were hiring. But I'm curious how you tackled the shift as a leader of this team. How do you keep people motivated and even maybe emotionally healthy while they're working remotely, but still part of this bigger culture?
It's challenging. And I think we're all in this same boat. We haven't experienced something like this before. So we can't go back and say, oh, yeah, 15, 20 years ago, this happened. What did we learn from it? We're learning as we move along. So I would say as a general rule, most employees love the ability to work remotely. It eliminates their commute. So from a time or a cost, with being a parent and being home when your kids come home from school, they don't have to be the latchkey kids, things of that nature. We have, recently we lost an employee. They said, I need that physical connection. Mm. So we're never going to be able to be all things to everybody. But the pendulum is definitely leaned toward people prefer the remote. And so that's, where we're guided to. But we continue to, like I said, we do surveys. We just did in the process of doing a mental health survey with all the different things with COVID and the challenges that exist today. And some of them aren't necessarily work related, but are you aware of our EAP programs or the different benefits through the health plans, things of that nature. So we're trying to keep an open dialogue, with employees as to opportunities within the organization, benefits within the organization. So I think it's an ongoing journey. I wouldn't say we've mastered it yet. And I think will be, future opportunities ahead, but we're just going to have to monitor it, as we move forward.
Absolutely. It's clear to me that Ox is a really innovative company. And as your team has kind of evolved over the years, and from your perspective as a leader, we've seen so much disruption in financial services over the past few years. I know all of the credit unions that we work with have been feeling it and seeing it and trying to keep up there. I'm curious, what are those overall trends that you see for the future of financial services? And where is your focus at Ox when it comes to innovating to meet some of these upcoming challenges?
Well, I think we've all seen the competition is greater than ever. If we go back, 20 years ago, a lot of the services that credit unions offer today didn't exist. And it's one of the things. So if you look at credit unions offering remote deposit capture, mobile banking, home banking, members want everything. They're not saying, oh, I'm going to give up something. They're like, hey, cool. I'll take that too. And
Right.
so I think it adds another dimension, for credit unions trying to manage that. And then in today's world, I say fintech, fintech, fintech. I mean, everywhere we turn, it's fintech. And I think our role is a little bit different. And I would say we have kind of a niche and a focus there, because a lot of the fintech it truly is tech. What can you develop maybe once, and how do you sell it to multiple organizations? Whereas a lot of what we do, it's heavily based on people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, we have to do what we can do in terms of economies of scale and looking at, different ways to maybe automate some accounting or different aspects of regulatory compliance. Obviously, our data analytics is heavy tech with cloud-based and all the things that go into that, but ultimately running it is people-based again. So it's really, we have to be careful not to be chasing the shiny object. So there's so many things out there, but we're really trying to focus on, the back office, and we're trying to listen to our credit unions as well. I mean, there's, different opportunities that have presented themselves over the years with lending, but we have partner CUSOs that our credit unions already own, and we don't want to compete with them. And it's like, hey, you're already doing mortgage lending or indirect lending, and that's great. That's not an area we want to get into. So we've really tried to package it within the back office, because the competition and the breadth is just so wide anymore. That's really our niche, and that's, what we're going to be looking at. But we are keeping our ears open if there are other opportunities outside of that, just in case.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective. It's so interesting to see. And, I'm sure 10 years from now, or maybe even just 5 years from now, we'll be having this conversation again and talk about, all of the changes that have evolved that we maybe even couldn't see coming. So it sounds like a really great philosophy there to kind of keep your eye on the horizon. And as we wrap up the show, we always like to have some fun with rapid fire questions to let our listeners get to know you better. And so the questions are rapid for me, but your answers don't have to be. So if you're ready, we will jump right in.
You bet.
All right. What is a recent purchase that you did not know you needed that has become something you can't live without?
Noise canceling headphones.
Okay. All right.
So you travel and you put the little earbuds in or other things, but you don't realize how nice it is to have something that kind of blocks everything out. So in terms of traveling, I couldn't do without them anymore. That's a must have.
All right. Do you have a brand that you prefer?
I have got some Sony ones. I'm really happy with them. Other brands have some Bose and so forth, but I got these Sonys and they rock. I like it.
Awesome. Love that. All right. I'll have to invest in those. I just have been using my AirPods, but definitely let in a lot of noise there. All right. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind for you and why?
I would say it'd be my father. My father, he has always been a hard worker all his life. He was involved in a family business. He didn't go to college. But yet he and his brothers took this business and became very successful at it, industrial trucking and truck parts. And I mean, he learned all aspects of it. And from working, rolling up the sleeves, hands-on, to the strategic part and how to grow and all those types of things. And at the end of the day, I think, what really made him successful is he was very much a people person. Mm. He had the respect of his coworkers, and he also had the respect of his customers. So that's why I would select my father.
Amazing. I love that. All right. A random question for you. What are you listening to most right now? Is it podcasts? Is it music? What is it?
I'd say I'd go back to the classic rock. It's probably music. I mean, I'm into the podcast and everything else, but sometimes the background, especially working at home, you can just put something on in the background. And I tend to migrate back to, I guess it dates me a little bit, but back to 70s and 80s type music from time to time. And so, that's what I listen to. Great.
I love that. Awesome. All right. Next question. Any books that you have gifted or you think just everybody should read?
The one I just finished, I'm not sure it's everybody should read. It's called Full Body Burden. and it resonated with me. A friend gave it to me, and then I've actually forwarded it on to my son to read. And so he's reading it right now. And it's not business related. It happens to deal with nuclear weapons. And living in Colorado, there was a nuclear weapons plant north of town, and I didn't live that far from it. And it was always, you never really knew what was going on there. And this book came out with all the things you really didn't want to know that was going on, but it did. And so that just because it was so local and, it was more personal, that's my last read. So if anybody's in the Colorado area, you'll know exactly what it is. Everybody else, probably not so much.
All right. Well, what did you say the title of that one was? We'll link to it here.
Full Body Burden.
Full Body Burden. Okay. We will link to that in the show notes for any of our listeners. I know we have quite a few in the Colorado area normally, so maybe some of those folks will be interested in checking it out too. All right, let's say the calendar is empty. What would you be doing to unwind outside of work?
Well, right now, my unwinding is cycling. So a couple reasons. I'm trying to get in shape, try to lose a little weight. It's always an ongoing thing. But I'm training with my son, which is great. We're actually working on doing a ride from Denver to Vail the first week of August. So
wow.
I need to keep up with him. I am going to be trying my best to get in shape to be able to do that ride here in about 6 weeks.
Okay.
That's where my spare time goes.
I bet that takes up quite a bit of spare time training for something like that. That is so cool. All right. Well, we will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. But my last question for you, Doug, is do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, or maybe final asks of our listeners today?
The only thing I would say is there are so many things that engages our mind and we can do. I would just say be passionate about what you do and don't be average. Just go for it. Pick the one or two things and just go all in. I think we can get distracted with, trying to be all things to everybody and do everything. But I think you got to pick the things that you're passionate about, and that'll make you happy.
What a great way to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, Doug, for being on the show. Really enjoyed getting to talk to you today.
It was great. I appreciate it.
Me too. Well, hopefully we'll get to run into each other in person sometime soon. Until then, hope you stay well. And thanks to all of our listeners today for tuning into the CUInsight Network. We will be back again next time.